All right, Earnestly podcast here with the man. We've been waiting for this one for a long time. My man E. Duke Bennett. My guy, what's up?
What's going on there, brother? Listen, from one Earnest to another, it is a pleasure to be on your podcast, DJ.
Wait,
I appreciate it.
Wait a second. Wait, the E means Earnest?
That's what it is, man.
Wait,
but see, I don't spell it like you, though. It's Earnest.
I'm EAR. Right. That's crazy, dude.
I know. Bro, that's why you and I vibe, man. We're a couple of handsome, light-skinned brothers. You know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And if I'm not mistaken, aren't you also Caribbean descent too?
Yes. Yes, sir. My family's from Jamaica.
Because mine's from Trinidad.
Yes, sir. See, so that's what I'm saying, man. We've always had this connection.
Yes.
It's like we're cousins, brother. That's what it is.
We might be. I mean, don't. I mean, seriously, dude. I know. My dad. Like, my dad's had what now? I think 3 wives now in his life, and I think 2 of them were.
Oh, Jesus. One was Ric Flair.
One was, yeah. Well, he's in his mid-60s. If you look at my father, he looks like he's like my brother. Like, I swear to God, I showed one of my coworkers yesterday a picture of me and my siblings and my dad from like last week, a picture we took together. And she's like, "Is that brother?" I go, "No, for that." You know, I was like, dude.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Like I say,
so you know what that means, right? That means that when you're his age, man, you're gonna look like Pharrell, man. You're just gonna continue to be smooth.
Yeah. I'm turning 42 in 2 weeks. I look like I'm 35 currently, so it's all good, man.
That's it.
God bless some good genes, though. Dude, where do we want to start? I mean, here's one thing I'll start real quick, randomly, and that I saw 2 days ago on your Twitter feed. You're a Heat fan?
I am a Miami Heat fan, and I'm not a new Miami Heat fan either. It goes all the way back. Pat Riley, man. There was something about Pat Riley that I really appreciated. Mm-hmm. I like his style. I like the way he carries himself and the way he talks trash, because it's very cerebral, the way he talks trash. Yeah. He'll insult you and you don't even know that he's insulting you. You know what I'm saying? So I always found that fun. But Timmy Hardaway with the killer crossover, man. I'm a short guy, man. I'm only 5'6". So I was never going to be Bill Russell. I was never going to be Shaq. I was never going to be Alonzo Mourning. But I could beat Timmy Hardaway, man. I could cross you up and make moves and distribute the ball. So yeah, man. I'm a long time Miami Heat fan.
No, so am I. And I even go further than you. I go back to Glenn Rice and Ronnie Cycli.
Oh, of course. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, that's crazy, dude. Same name, same favorite basketball team. I mean, what else, man? We're probably cousins now, as you said. I mean, seriously, it's funny. Nah, that's cool, man. I mean.
So here's the real test. Who is your favorite pro wrestler of
all time? Well, it's Savage, Macho Man Randy Savage now. Like, growing up, so here's this for me. Growing up, it was always Hogan. It was Hogan 1, Savage 2. Became an adult. Now it's Savage 1, Hogan 2. Although, to be honest, and we can obviously get to this in a little bit, one, two. The Hogan thing is a little more weird now. You have to separate the two. You got to separate Terry and separate Hulk. You know, Hulk is a Mount Rushmore guy. Sure. Terry's an asshole. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is. But yeah, that's how it is for me. You know, but that's cool. Heat fan.
So
same name.
I'm just like you.
Yeah.
For me, just like you, I was a big Hogan fan. I was a Hulkamaniac. I said my prayers. I ate my vitamins. I actually had the Hulk Hogan chewable vitamins.
Really?
So I said my prayers. I ate my vitamins. It wasn't until he lost to the Ultimate Warrior, and that broke my heart, because I thought Hulk Hogan was going to die. Like, I was like, oh my God, my hero has just lost, and we're not used to seeing him lose. And it's funny, I'll never forget this. And you'll appreciate this. This is back in the 80s. Well, no, that was 90s, right?
That was 1990, actually. That was 1990. That was 1990, April 1990.
1990. Okay.
Yeah.
So we had Cablevision, and we were one of the few houses in the neighborhood that had Cablevision from like way back. So we had cable TV. So everyone would come over to our place to watch all the pay-per-views, pro wrestling, boxing. I got to see all the Mike Tyson fights, all the Sugar Ray Leonard, all that stuff. But I bawled my eyes out when Hogan lost to Warrior, because I thought Hulkamania was dead. And everybody laughed at me. They were like, It's not real. What's wrong with you? You know what I mean? He lost the match. So what? He'll be back. It's not like we're going to his funeral tomorrow. Like, what the hell? And honestly, it made me sit there and really think about it. And then I was like, oh, wait a second. I never want to feel this way again. I never want to be so wrapped up into something that it breaks my heart to this degree. So
Right.
one of the things was, because I had cable, I could watch WWF and I could watch the NWA, right?
Right.
Ric Flair. I loved Ric Flair as well. But Hulk Hogan was a superhero. Ric Flair was just a man. You know what I mean? He wasn't immortal. He
Right.
was a man. He looked like people that I know. Flashy. He wanted to be a pimp, kind of. You know what I mean? With the pinky
Right.
ring and the big fur coat and all that. But I made a decision that night, honestly. I said, I never want my heart to be broken like this ever again from anything. So I'm going to stick with Ric Flair, because Ric Flair loses all the time, but yet he comes back just as strong. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And as
Yeah.
crazy as that sounds from a psychological standpoint, it really taught me a lesson at a young age, that there's something to be said about things that are too larger than life. They're
Yeah.
too good to be true. It's
Yeah.
not real. And always go to the thing that okay, I can depend on that. I can depend on Ric Flair. He might lose, but he's still going to talk trash. He's still going to be rich. He's still going to have the beautiful women. He's still, you know what I mean? Like, he's still going to be Ric Flair. And so, and of course, just like Hogan, Flair, whoever he is a real person, not necessarily the best person in the world, but that
But at least he
character
admits that, though. He admits that
has
stuff,
always
though.
been an inspiration.
No, and
Of
he admits
course.
that too.
I mean, Ric Flair to a fault. To a fault. Ric Flair is the first person to let you know he's not the best person in the world.
Yeah,
You
I
know
actually
what
just
I mean?
watched. I just watched his Broken Skull sessions with Austin actually a couple days ago, and yeah, he opened up a lot about just like wasn't the best father, he wasn't the best the person in general, but but I think that's what it is too. Also with Flair, is that and you and I have the same background in that way with Hogan and this and that. Flair was more relatable. And as you get older, teenager,
Yes.
getting the girls, who's the one who's the cooler one really? It's Flair. Now granted, the whole thing is kind of weird for me because I'm what you call a Hulk Hogan disciple. Like when he went heel in '96 with NWO, I followed him. I made it. I had a fork in the road. Do I say, well, screw you, Hogan? You all the values I grew up on, and now you're for game. You get away with those and go on the dark side. I went to the dark side.
That's deep. That's really, really deep.
Yeah.
So Hulk Hogan led you astray, basically.
You did in my teenage years, yeah. And to be fair, Hogan came a little bit relatable to some degree when he went heel. This is why I say he's the great. This is why I say he's the greatest of all time because, well, I mean, he's certainly Mount Rushmore because he changed the business twice. As a babyface, obviously Hulkamania and how big that was. We know how big that was in the '80s and early '90s. And then NWO, he changed the business twice. They put Vince out of business.
Let me tell you something. Anyone who can't acknowledge the greatness that is Hulk Hogan, you're cheating yourself. You're fooling yourself. You are a person that is not in touch with reality.
Right.
So I listen. Whether we agree with the man behind the character or not, you cannot take away anything from Hulk Hogan in pro wrestling. That is absolutely one of the all-time greats, if not the all-time great. I always say Ric Flair is the greatest champion, and he's my favorite of all time. So Ric Flair is Bill Russell to me. So if Ric Flair is Bill Russell, then Hulk Hogan. I think it's okay to say that Hulk Hogan is Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Yeah. So then where's Austin then?
That's fair.
So what's Steve Austin? Because he's complicated too in the sense that he had a short run in WWE, his peak.
Sure.
But it was the
powerful.
biggest money run in history of the company, in history of wrestling, honestly.
So is Steve Austin? Is he LeBron James or is he Kobe Bryant?
That's a good one. I guess the better one, I would say if I put Hogan as Magic Johnson and put Jordan as Austin, because I think at the end of the day, and I think this is where I've changed this perspective, probably in the last 5 years. If you ask me in 2014 who's the greatest of all time, Hogan or Austin, I would say Hogan because what I explained to you. But now, and when I was on your podcast back in back in November, and I said to you that, I took 17 years off, came back in 2019.
Sure.
The fact that Stone Cold Steve Austin still gets the biggest pop in the company in his late 50s, I think sold it for me. Like, especially in wrestling, relevancy matters to me. And if you're still getting a major pop 20 years after you wrestled your last match in the ring, and you saw WrestleMania this year, how big that pop was when he came out, and the whole nine, it's got to be Austin because the impact's bigger. It's shorter, but it's the higher ceiling.
But you got to remember something though, man. Hogan did it for so long.
That's true.
That's true. And Hogan got there sooner in his career than Austin did.
Yeah, that's very true.
Austin had a fairly complete career before he got to the WWF. You got to remember that too, right? Because he started off in the world class, and then he went on. I think he did some work in the USWA, and then he eventually made his way to WCW.
Right.
He was already 8, 9, 10 years in the game before he got to the WWF.
Correct.
So it's difficult for me to put Austin ahead of Hogan for that reason, because Hulk Hogan is still delivering box office numbers today. If you put Hulk Hogan, if you advertise Hulk Hogan's going to be on TV, it's going to attract advertisers.
Yeah.
Like, people are going to spend money because they want to be associated with that name. Even today, even the fact that Hogan has tarnished the name as a global brand, it's still the number one global brand in pro wrestling. I think The Rock is probably the only global brand that rivals Hulk Hogan as a brand.
Yeah, The Rock. I mean, like my top five. I mean, all those guys you mentioned are my top five. My favorite the whole time. Rock, Austin, Hogan, Savage, and HBK, of course. But yeah, Hogan to me, I'll say it again, it's complicated for me because, like I said, I watch. It's like when I watch the old stuff, watch him and Andre and him and Savage, and all the stuff from the '80s. I go back to that place when I was at 8, 9, 10 years old. I get back to that safe place, we'll call it. Like, oh, this is fantastic. This is the world. But then you go outside of that, like, yeah, but this guy said these things, and this, he said this stuff, and he was politicking, behind the scenes. And so you have to kind of weigh, kind of just separate the two, I guess, really. It's complicated, I guess.
Well, EJ, this is my biggest issue with Hogan. It's not what he did, because we as human beings, we're all going to make crazy mistakes.
We're all flawed.
If you follow me for my entire life and put a microphone on it or a video camera on it, I'm probably going to say some things that I wish I could take back. There's no question about that, right? So it's not so much what he said. That alone is a problem. It's the fact that, in my opinion, I've never seen him properly atone for what he said.
That's true.
He went straight to, be careful, man, they're going to record you and you never know and people are watching you. And to me, he focused more on that than on the fact that, hey, I got some deep-seated racism issues here that I need to own. And it's not just that I said a word because I was feeling upset and I was at a low point in life. Who the hell, everybody gets upset, but me being upset doesn't turn me into a racist. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't start saying a bunch of racial slurs just because I'm having a tough time in life. So it was the fact that he never properly atoned. Hulk Hogan was probably the first racially ambiguous wrestler, at least that I can remember.
Right.
There were black people that looked at Hulk Hogan and didn't even know he was white. You know what I mean? The man looked like us, and he said brother, and he would hang out with people.
And not only that, he was a cartoon character too on top of that.
And backgrounds. Well, that's what I mean. So it's like he transcended race to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
So for that guy to turn around and then talk about us the way that he did, where it's just hatred over a race and literally calling himself a racist and literally saying the worst thing that could happen to him is to come back to life as a black man. Just crazy stuff where it's like, no, this isn't a mistake. You didn't just say a slur and that it just slipped out and that was a bad word and whatever. No, you got a fundamental issue within you. You hate me because of the color of my skin. So because of that, I could never trust you. And I can always look at you as a man and say, this is not the type of person that I ever would want to be around or encourage anybody else to be around. This person has some serious issues. You know what I mean? So it breaks my heart on a different scale. And I know you feel the same way because,
Yeah.
like you said, we were Hulkamaniacs, bro. Like I really went out and made my parents buy the vitamins. I
Yeah.
really started saying prayers before I even knew what saying prayers meant. I just knew I had to do the thing that Hulk Hogan told me to do. You know what I mean? So it really is disturbing and quite frankly traumatic on a scale that I don't hear enough people talk about.
Yeah.
I don't hear enough people articulating the fact that as young people, we really followed this character.
Mm-hmm.
And as adults, we find out he's this horrible, horrible person. What did that do to you? How did that affect your relationships going forward, just in terms of people that you've idolized? How did that make you
Mm-hmm.
look at people differently? You know?
I will say it does resonate well. It resonates in a way that the crowds, he comes out now, and he gets booed like crazy. Like WrestleMania last year.
Yes, he does.
My co-host
Yep.
of my wrestling podcast,
Yep.
they go to every WrestleMania. They were in person, and the boos we heard on Peacock was worse in person. They said it was worse. And I think also I think a week or two ago they mentioned his name. It was doing Cody's promo after WrestleMania. Mentioned Hogan's name and they were booing him too. So clearly people are. He's not. He's definitely not. His image is taking a major hit. In the last couple of years. But it's funny though. Like
Well, you
talk
got to
about.
keep in mind.
Go ahead.
Keep in mind something though, EJ.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just make this point real quick.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole generation that are not us.
Yeah.
They didn't grow up idolizing Hogan the way that we did.
Right.
They could never understand what it means. Because keep in mind what was going on back then, right? We had Hulk Hogan, we had Michael Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
We were at the height of mania of idolizing
Pop culture mania was,
right?
in the 80s were huge.
Pop culture mania was on a different scale back then, and it's unlike anything I've ever seen since. So these folks will never understand that. They just know that, oh, that's the racist, so we're gonna boo that person.
Right.
So when you say that he really took a hit, that brand, you're absolutely right. That brand is really, it's probably half as strong as it ever was before.
And it's funny, like talking about race and stuff and this racial stuff and whatnot. Like this is a theme that I think you, especially, and getting to know you last year, that you touch on a lot. Whether it's wrestling, sports, or the world as a whole. But what I love about the conversation that you present on Twitter and even on your podcast, which by the way, saw this Yellow podcast recently too. Tell the truth. I really enjoy that show. Really enjoy that show because you're coming from.
Thank you.
No, because what you're doing there is you bring up real issues and real conversation with real people, and you're also doing it with people that you may disagree with also too, which is fine. And you and I are in the same boat with that one. Like you need to open dialogue, people.
I'm very disturbed by the concept of where we are in society today, where people feel like they can only surround themselves and only interact with people who agree with them.
Amen.
I think that's a very dangerous thing to do because we are a society and we can't move forward as a society unless we sit down and confront each other and have open dialogue with each other. And even when we don't agree in the moment, I think over time, you can find a way to coexist with people if you continue to interact with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I challenge people about race, about sexism, about LGBTQ plus. I challenge people about the things that really are hot button issues for that reason, because I want the dialogue. I want to be able to put my cards on the table so you know where I'm coming from.
Right.
And I want to see your cards too so I know where you're coming from. And then from there we can act accordingly toward each other. I don't want any surprises. I don't want a Hulk Hogan moment. You know what I mean? I want to know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. No, because
you real though, and it's funny. Yeah.
No, and I said because you have some people, just in Western media alone that are pretty like, let's say, prognosticators or just, provocateurs that they may think they're from you, for example, but yet you give them a platform and you have a discussion. Do you get a lot of pushback on that from people, from your listeners and stuff?
Brother, let me tell you something. I make a joke about it now because it is, I'm one of those people that let's laugh about it so we don't end up crying about it, because it can be a lot. And I think that mental health and emotional stability and things like that, this is something that people are afraid to talk about below the surface. You see a lot of people say mental health and I need to take a break from this, and that's cool. They're
Yeah.
starting a conversation, but what's beneath that, right? I get bombarded constantly with people saying the most crazy things to me, threatening me. I've been doxxed, the whole 9 yards, because I have an opinion or because I'll have somebody on my show that they don't like. You know what I mean? I'll give you a prime example. I just recently interviewed EC3 from Control Your
Oh,
Narrative.
right.
And a lot of people have this notion that Control Your Narrative is this ultra right wing conspiracy pro wrestling company that is just the worst thing ever. Trump is involved and all kinds of other stuff. This is a thing that we must not like. We must hate this thing. But the problem is the majority of those people who are saying those things, they've never interacted with EC3 personally. They don't even try to interact with this person. A lot of these folks, and I blame the content creators too, because a lot of these content creators, they have so much to say, but they don't reach out to the source directly. They
Yeah,
just
so
sit
true.
there and spin their narratives, brother. And I'm not about that. My thing is, I want to know who you are. So if I see something and it's like, well, what is that? I'm going to reach out to you directly and I'm going to say to you, hey, listen, people are talking about this thing. I want to know what the truth is. Why don't you come on the show and let's discuss it? And here's regardless of what my opinion is, I'm not going to let that get in the way of our interaction, because at the end of the day, I want the audience, I want the world to hear you in your own words so they can judge you by you, not by what somebody else is saying, not somebody else's interpretation of who you are. I want them to hear directly from you, right? So people trash me for putting EC3 on the show, but anyone who actually listened to the interview, they're walking away and now they're starting to question what they thought they knew. Like, oh, wait a second, this doesn't sound so bad at all. Wait a second, I might actually check this out. You know
Right.
what I
Yeah.
mean? It's bizarre,
You
bro.
know, another
It's bizarre.
guy.
But
Go ahead.
no, what I was going to say, but I come from the world of politics. I come from the world of government, and we're talking about real life and death stuff.
Yes,
You know
absolutely.
what I mean? People are losing their jobs, and people are in a situation where they might get evicted from their homes off of decisions being made by these elected officials. So being threatened and being screamed at, and people coming at me assuming one thing before they know all the facts, bro, I've been dealing with that since I was a sophomore in high school
Yeah.
when I had my first internship. So the irony of all of this, EJ, is you can look at anything that I say about politics, about sports,
Right.
about pro wrestling, just like you said earlier, and you'll notice that my talking points are very much the same. You know what I mean? I'm very much a consistent guy on what I believe in, and regardless of what it is. But you'll also notice that I always keep the discussion lines open. So for all you trolls out there, for all you people out there, for you promoters, Tony Khan, and anyone who's associated with AEW has a
Yeah.
problem with my takes about the sexism
As I wear the
and
AW
racism
t-shirt.
that happens within that company and the decision making. I don't know, as you wear that T-shirt, all I have to say to you is, as you can see, it's been 6 years and I'm still going strong. I'm not going anywhere as far as me putting out my content and me leaving the lines of discussion open. But as Tony Khan found out when he jumped in my inbox, I will speak to you and I will voice how I feel and I will give you an opportunity to correct what I find is wrong, because that's the other thing. I always offer solutions, EJ.
Yeah.
I'm not a complainer by nature. I'm actually a problem solver. So I always say, hey, you're deficient in this area. Here's where you should be, you know what I mean, bringing yourself up.
Right.
We should have more women's content in AEW. We should see more black and brown folk getting an opportunity, at least competing for the world championship. That's not difficult things to get done. So am I wrong for saying that? Okay, that's in the eye of the beholder, but I'm going to say it every day. Just like I'm going to say every day, you shouldn't be discriminated against EJ and I just because we're black folk in America. You know what I'm saying? We should
Yeah,
have equal
absolutely.
opportunities. You shouldn't tell EJ's daughter that she can't have an opportunity to be whatever she wants to be in life just because she's a woman and just because she's a woman of color. That's not acceptable. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to say that every day, and I don't really care how anyone feels about it. It's the right thing to do.
Probably my favorite discussion I think you've ever had on your podcast, one of your podcasts, is Brad Shepard's a pretty controversial guy in the wrestling community. and you guys had a pretty. I listened to it
Yes.
last week, or 2 weeks ago, how long it was, and it was actually a very spirited discussion, about race, and it was on the Tell Us the Truth podcast, not the Duke That's Wrestling. So it provided more open discussion about race as a whole. And so he's someone that's on the right side of well, he says he's independent, but you would think he's on the right side of the political spectrum. But even he acknowledged that white supremacy exists and stuff. And the things you would never not know that if you don't have these discussions with people like that. So the problem is really more so is, okay, we agree on what the problems lie in this country or this and that, but I think the separation comes how we deal with the problem, the solution
Yep.
to the problem.
Yep. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You know, Brad Shepard is a prime example of what we're talking about here. Here's a guy that everyone said is the worst person in the world.
Right.
You cannot interact with Brad. Don't talk to Brad. We don't talk to Brad. We have to shun him. And I said, well, why? I want to know about this guy.
Challenge
If
folks.
he's the worst person in the world, yeah, I want to know. I want to know why people feel this way. Number one, but I also want to know, how does he feel about people feeling this way about him? You know what I mean? What is this all about? So that's when I reached out to Brad personally and said, hey man, I want you to come on my show. And at first it was Duke Loves Rasslin,
Mhm.
and I want you to confront what people say about you, and let's hear what you have to say. And Brad stood firm and expressed himself, and I let the audience decide. And the crazy part about it is the majority of my audience was like, that guy's not so bad after all,
No.
which was crazy. So later on, when I had him on Tell Us the Truth, and we had an open discussion about race and about politics, he brought up Black Lives Matter and all sorts of things. And we were able to peel back some layers,
Mhm.
and we found things that we agreed about, and we found things that we disagreed about. But the point was the point. We had the discussion. And here's the craziest part about this, EJ, and I'll stop on this point.
Mhm.
Brad Shepard on his platforms, since he and I have been interacting in particular, he has called out racism more than I would say anyone who's like him on their platform.
Right.
That man has dug deep into issues surrounding race and people of color being marginalized and what have you, because I've challenged him to think about these things. And he always had an opinion, but I challenged him to voice those opinions on his platform
Right.
in front of his audience, and to get them to start talking about this more in a different way, where it's like, you don't know what you don't know. Let's talk about some other things. Did you know that it was this bad? Did you know that this is really happening? So the irony of that is, because we have this open dialogue, he's been more receptive, and he's actually done the due diligence of spreading the damn gospel.
There you
So
go.
you tell me, which way do we want to be here? Do we want to not? Do we want to be closed and we only reach the people that we can reach, or do we want the message to spread as far and as wide as it possibly can spread?
And you don't get that unless you have open dialogue.
Brother, brother, I had a pro wrestler ask me the other day, "Hey man, they're telling me that Brad Shepard is a bad guy and they shouldn't talk to you, and I shouldn't interact with him. What do you say to that?" And I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. How has Brad Shepard interacted with you personally?" "Well, he shares my stuff and he shouts me out, and he's helped me gain some followers, and more people are aware that I'm this indie wrestler trying to make my bones out here. He's literally helped me out." I said, "Okay, so let me ask you this question. Would you rather only be pigeonholed into the audience that these other folks want you to be pigeonholed in? Or are you trying to reach everybody? You're a pro wrestler. You're an entertainer. Your job is to entertain everyone, and that's how you make your living. Who the hell am I to tell you not to interact with anyone? Are you kidding me? Are
Exactly.
you kidding me?"
Exactly.
So,
Couldn't agree more.
you know what I mean? Let people feel the way they do, man. I like Brad. I don't agree with Brad on everything. We disagree on women's wrestling. He can't stand the majority of women's wrestling that's out there today. I think that most of it is pretty good. And the people that I love. So we disagree on that. We disagree on certain other things too. You know, there are certain wrestlers that he'll bust their chops, and it's like, well, why'd you have to give them a hard time? You know, Nyla Rose is a friend of mine, man, and I could say that openly. I really really have a lot of time for Nyla, and on a personal level, I like that person. You know, Brad doesn't agree that a transgender wrestler should be wrestling women. because of some of the injuries and things that are not only possible, but some have happened.
I mean, it is
You
a
know, my
fair argument, though.
Okay, so here's my take on that. I come from a household where my mother was a Boston police officer for over 37 years. She
Mm-hmm.
just retired.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a woman who, and just talking to other people, this isn't even stuff that she's told me, just talking to other people. She's a decorated officer. There were shots fired calls in Franklin Hill projects. Anyone who knows Boston can remember that, or Franklin Field. And she'd have to run in by herself. This woman, barely 5 feet tall, this little Jamaican woman,
Mm-hmm.
in the 80s, during the height of the crack epidemic,
Yep.
during the height of gang culture. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
she's running into these situations by herself and stabilizing the situation without having to fire a shot. EJ, I've seen women do anything that a man can do.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be very challenging for me to tell a woman she can't fake fight with a man, or
Right.
she can't fake fight with somebody who's transgender, or she can't fake fight with.
Well, to be clear,
anything
I'm not saying I agree with him. I'm just saying
mean?
I can see the argument he's trying to put up there. I don't say I agree with him necessarily on that either. Especially when you come out of a sport that's
I'm with you.
a scripted sport, obviously. But I totally get what you're saying. Totally what you're saying.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like professionals need to be professional. Injuries happen in wrestling, no two ways about it. But professionals need to be professional.
Right.
So can a woman and a transgender woman wrestle each other? Of course they can. Why not? But some people, they don't want to see men and women wrestle. I talk to old timers all the time about this. They think that it's an abomination for a man to simulate violence on a woman. You know what I mean? Which is why they don't like intergender wrestling. I disagree, because women are doing jobs where they have to do real violence against men or combat real violence against men.
Right.
So to me, if that exists in real life, then why can't that exist in the fantasy world? You know what I mean?
Right. Now you say you're involved in politics and stuff, where I guess your day job, whatever. People might be asking this, like, what do you fall in the political spectrum? Like, you might ask them.
Great question. Great question. So I've been a registered undeclared my entire voting life.
Okay.
Right. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I was fortunate enough that I learned how to reading the newspaper.
Right.
Like, that's how my parents taught me how to read. So because I always read at a much higher level than my peers as a young person. Because of that, I was forced to start partaking in critical thinking on more than just what's in front of me at a very, very young age. So I started forming opinions on everything from sports to entertainment to politics. I'll never forget when Michael Dukakis, who was the governor of Massachusetts at the time, when he and George H.W. Bush ran against each other. I had an opinion on that race.
1988.
I had an opinion. And listen, I'm 5-6 years old, but I had an opinion, right? So, and I started in politics young too. I mean, I just told you, my first internship, I was a sophomore in high school. I got to see what Democrats and Republicans are really like behind the scenes here in Massachusetts, which is really a political hub in the country.
Yeah.
Because of that, I don't align myself with any gangs. I'm not Bloods. I'm not Crips. I'm me. You know what I mean? But here's the thing. I'm the most liberal person that I can think of. I'm very liberal because I'm a Massachusetts guy. So I believe that everyone deserves an opportunity. I don't believe in restricting people to a certain degree. Obviously, be common sense. I mean, a person who has significant mental health issues probably should not have access to firearms. So, there's my contradiction there. But for the most part, I'm a pretty liberal guy, but I'm also a sensible guy. So I have no issue with voting for a Republican when it makes sense. I have no issue with voting for a Republican when strategically we need checks and balances, because I don't believe in absolute power for anyone. I think that's a recipe for disaster. You know what I'm saying? So I would say that I am a very left-leaning, middle-of-the-road person, meaning that I'm probably going to vote left on most issues, but when the left is not making sense, I'm the first one to call them out on it.
And that's the thing.
That's just who I am, man.
That's that we don't get involved in this, like this bubble, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Like my journey is a little different too. Like
I'm not in the gangs, man.
yeah, well, I was raised in a conservative household, so, so naturally I was more right leaning growing up as a kid. Church obviously was the foundation of that. Then you get older, you start seeing
Sure.
the world with your own eyes, and you start seeing things for your own. So I was registered Republican until 2008, and then I left the party. I've been MPA ever since then. I probably voted more left in recent years, not because I actually like that side of the aisle, like it may be, but I've seen stuff on the other side that's been kind of nuts. I also agree that there's a lot of shit on the left too that's also going nuts as well too. So again, I'm like caught in this whole situation where like I'm in the middle of all this crap and like, we get some common sense here? Like, you get some common sense discussions and dialogue here, and let's work together and fix problems instead of worry about being in the bubble and libtard this and racist that, and like you and I are kind of caught in the same cloth in that way, And to me, it's all about common sense. Like I got criticized.
But you know what?
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say we're the bridge builders, EJ. We're the
Yeah.
ones who, at the end of the day, we're the ones that are going to move the country forward.
Mhm.
And traditionally, that's the case,
Right.
because we're not aligned to one side or the other.
Right.
We're the bridge. We're the ones that they all want. So they got to listen to us because they can't win without us.
Right.
You know what I
Especially-
mean? So
especially
that's
us.
the irony of that.
Especially us.
So, yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're about to make a strong point, though. Please.
No, I'm saying for example is this. Like, I'm not I'm in Florida, and obviously our governor here is pretty well known for how he's handled things. I've listened to a lot of praise on him the last couple of years for how he's handled COVID. In my opinion, I thought he's handled it in a way which more it's kind of common sense. And then I've gotten so much pushback from members of my family who are left leaning, of course, saying, "What are you talking about?" Like this, I'm like, "Oh, wait, are you not right wing?" I go, "Why does it have to be this or that? Why can't it be like, okay, I don't agree with his politics necessarily, but he's handling this correctly, or vice versa? Why can't it be, okay, I'm okay with the way he's handling this, and that's it? Why has to be this big old, okay, well, are you on this team or that team? Like, get the fuck out of here with that shit. I'm not into the team crap. Screw that. The only team I care about is my family. That's it. My kids and my wife. That's it.
Damn right.
It's the only team I care about.
Damn right.
Damn
right. Damn right.
Yeah. Where are you on cancel culture these days? And how everything's being handled?
I find it a joke.
Huh?
I find it a joke. It's abysmal. The whole concept of cancel culture. I think that what we have is a society of people who have no control over their regular lives. So they're looking to impose their will and impose control over the lives of others.
Mm-hmm.
And I experience it every single week. Somebody's trying to cancel me because they don't like the fact that I interviewed so and so, or they don't like the fact that I'm speaking up and calling out systemic racism or sexism or something like that. Somebody's always trying to cancel me. And I think it's a joke because here's what they got to understand. You can't cancel someone who owns their own stuff. I don't answer to anybody. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that people got to understand. When you're not bought and paid for, when you don't have to hide who you are, when you are known for speaking your mind, whether I'm a volunteer, whether I'm getting paid, whether I'm on the public dime, whatever it is, everything that I do, people come to me for my opinion on things because they know they're going to get a balanced truth. And whether they agree with it or disagree with it, they know that I'm at least going to take the time to explain to you how I arrived at the conclusion that I've arrived at. So it's amazing the people that come to me for my opinion on things. You would never even know. Even people who may even express that they can't stand me, they'll still come to me and say, "Hey, man, what do you think about this?" Because they want to measure, they want to test, are they on the right side of history on certain things, which is a very strange place to be in, EJ, because again, you'll see people dog me in public and be in my inbox asking my opinion on things. Or be in my inbox and saying, "How come you didn't give me credit for this thing? I finally did the thing that you said I should do. Why aren't you giving me credit?" So that's another thing, which is a fair call out. So I always make sure if I called you out on something before and you correct it, I got to go and correct and give you acknowledgement for, hey, you're moving in the right direction. And you'll even see that on my timeline today. I just called out and gave props to Fightful for featuring some of the most incredible Black women on their site. In their magazine, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Mimi and also Candice Cordelia. These are two incredible women in the pro wrestling space and in the journalism space who are doing some great things. And I called out Fightful a couple of years ago for not collaborating enough with Black women. So it's ironic that they finally have come around. And if you listen to Sean Ross Sapp, he'll say that they've been there all along, but I haven't seen it. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I just haven't seen it, which is why I called it out.
Well, it's probably behind the paywall.
Props for doing the right thing. Yeah, well, there you go. So it's like, feature the thing the most that you want people to know about you. Imagine that. So cancel culture is nonsense to me. And listen, I interviewed the leading figure in what's called ambiguous loss. Mm-hmm. And I did this on Tell Us the Truth. The whole concept is there's no such thing as closure. We got to get over this concept of closure. There's no perfect closure. Things happen, and we need to find a way to adjust and accept. And even when we lose something or someone, go through your mourning process, of course, but just understand that eventually life has to continue to move forward.
Yeah.
Right. So, in a sense, and she said something that was really interesting. People who participate in cancel culture, they're looking for closure. You did something I don't like, so I need to shut you down for good, and you can never exist anymore. No one can talk to you. No one can consume whatever you put out to the world. You're finished. You're canceled. That's a cop-out. That's garbage. I don't want to cancel you if I disagree with you. I want you to change your behaviors. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And because I want you to change your behaviors, and I am willing to work with you to help you change your behaviors, that is why even my biggest critics will still talk to me and still reach out to me. And here's a crazy word. Will still collaborate with me. Imagine that.
Yeah, because people look at you as a sensible person. It's not, you are who you are. Doors open for discussion, whether you like me or not. I'm the same way too. Yep. I'm the same way too. I'm totally with you. So a little lighthearted here, real quick.
That's why I respect you, EJ.
Yeah,
that's why I respect you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
Now that's why I respect you, bro. Yeah.
You said it earlier in the podcast. Obviously, big Heat fan for years, going on 3 decades now. Now you're obviously located in Boston. You're born in Boston too, right?
Born and raised, brother. Yes,
all right.
Sir.
So I'm a New Yorker. Are you all, other than the basketball, are you all Boston sports, or do you mix it up?
Listen, I grew up in the 80s, man.
Yankees?
So I grew up at a time where I'm a Yankees fan, absolutely. But I grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the 80s in Boston. So I grew up at a time where the people who would call me a nigger and spit on me and threaten to beat me up in the neighborhood,
right?
The people who I was forced to learn how to fight because I had to fight their kids in order to exist. There were streets where I was told I couldn't even walk down, right? And I would purposely walk down those streets. And I took a few ass whoopings as a young kid until I learned how to fight. And I would, I'm fighting 2-3 kids at a time just to let people know I'm not going to back down. They were always wearing Red Sox stuff or wearing Boston Bruins stuff.
That makes sense.
So at a very young age, when I say very young, I'm talking 8, 9, 10 years old. At a very young age, I made it a very deliberate point that I would never, ever, ever wear those colors and walk around wearing that and support those teams in that way, because that represented something that was the complete opposite of who I wanted to be as a human being. So to this day, no, man, I'm a New York Yankees fan. I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. I'm a Miami Heat fan, and I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Wow, you got all
and
over
that doesn't mean I don't love my city. I love my city. I represent my city. I love the fact that sports generates tax revenue for my city. So I'm not knocking that aspect of it. But there's just no way I could ever convert and quote unquote be a fan of that, considering what I saw growing up and what I experienced growing up here in Boston. And ironically, a lot of, especially older Black folk, are the same way, man. They just will not come around because of those experiences back then.
That's interesting. Cowboy fan. Okay, so like we're rivals in football. I'm a Giants fan. So I'm New York some basketball. I'm a Giants fan in football. I'm a Mets fan in baseball. Mets fan, not Yankees.
Ooh.
Rangers in hockey, but I do support the teams down here in Florida. Obviously, down in Miami. I've come around the Dolphins in recent years. I'm my number 2 team. You know, come around the Panthers here in hockey, of course. You know, I'm a diehard Heat fan, of course, though. But I can, you know, I can relate somewhat. You know, I can't relate obviously to that, but I can see that. That makes a lot of sense, though. Like when that experience shaped the way you looked at, you know, the world, really, in sports included.
Yes, sir.
That had been
Yes, sir.
somewhat traumatic to some degree, and then, but then at the same time, like, okay, you rejoice when the Yankees beat the Red Sox, and you rejoice when, you know, obviously the Patriots don't do well, and all that. I can see why that would bug you, you know.
Well,
So
you know, it's listen. My father's from Mississippi. I told you this before, EJ. My father's from Mississippi,
really, okay.
and you know how racist. You know how racist Mississippi
Oh,
is,
you don't get worse than the Mississippi.
and you know what I'm saying. And my mother is from Jamaica, and she didn't knowingly experience racism until she came here to the United States. And then it's like it slapped her in the face. She
Yeah,
like boom. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
here it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You're one of those. So I was always taught. Let me tell you something. God blessed you with a brain.
Mm-hmm.
We've helped you cultivate sensibility, and we've instilled confidence in you and respect, not only for yourself but respect for others. But what comes with that is the responsibility that you need to use your voice and speak up for others who may not have what you have. Maybe they were not cultivated to be the way that you are. So you need to defend other people. And part of that too is you got to always stand up for yourself. How the hell are you going to help somebody else if you won't even stand up for yourself?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I have a spirit of activism within me, but I'm not unreasonable. I'm not such an activist that I'm going to destroy you. I don't want to ever rob anyone of their dignity, which is why I'm always willing to work together with anyone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'll call you out. If you're willing to correct the behaviors, then let's work on that together and let's move forward together. That's just the way I am, bro.
Right. Let's finish up with on a happy note, quick. 2 things I want to ask you, wrestling related, of course. Where are you in the Roman Reigns run right now?
Love it. I think what Roman's doing right now is a masterpiece.
Mhm.
I'm okay with Cody possibly defeating Roman for one of those belts. I think that Cody and the Miz, that needs to continue to happen because that's the one feud I want to see more than anything. So Cody being a champion would be interesting, especially if the Miz is his challenger. But overall, I love what Roman's doing. I love what they're doing with Roman. I like long reigns. That's just the way I am, man.
But it's funny because like this is the longest reign. Like people, we're now getting into the territory of now early Hogan 4 years, San Martino, because we weren't getting like even after Hogan's first reign, we were getting at the most a year, maybe year and a half if you're
Yep.
lucky, you know. But most reigns between 1990 and present day don't go longer than a year. Like I think CM Punk had one in
No,
2011, but like a little over a year. But beyond that, we have a 2 year reign, and you look at the way this is being
unheard
booked.
of.
This can go another year, another WrestleMania. You know, so
Sure. Sure. Especially with the Rock lurking in the background. I mean, that's the match we all want to see at this point, right?
do we get it? That's the question. Do we get it?
You know, I think that financially it makes no sense for The Rock to do it.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that Vince McMahon would have allowed The Rock to and his team to take over the XFL without this. So I think this is the last thing that The Rock has to do for WWE, and he really needs to do it for his cousin. So it's easy to do when you're doing it for family, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that this is the last thing that he needs to do, and it's it's not worth it financially for him, considering how much he can make in Hollywood, considering that every time he wrestles now he gets injured. It's not worth it for him on that front,
Mm-hmm.
but doing the right thing, I think we get The Rock and Roman at WrestleMania next year. I think so.
Damn. Yeah. I mean, it could happen. Last one here. Give me your Mount Rushmore for wrestling Mount Rushmore all time. Yours personally.
Okay, now and correct me if I'm wrong. This is four, right?
That's
Mount
correct.
Rushmore is four.
Yep.
Okay, Ric Flair,
Okay.
Hulk Hogan,
Mm-hmm.
A name that does not get mentioned, and it really should. Ricky Dozen.
Okay.
Okay, when we talk about the legend, the mythical figure of Japanese pro wrestling, and the foundation of a lot of that style that you see today that we call the Japanese style, that's Ricky Dozen, man. So Ricky Dozen. And I'm gonna go with my favorite. And that doesn't mean that she's the most well known, but I'm gonna go with my favorite. Uh Manami Toyota.
Who was it? I didn't miss that. Who was that?
Manami Toyota.
Oh,
So
okay. I know it is.
Toyota is
Right.
literally she's probably the greatest wrestler of all time, not named Ric Flair. Um, and when you watch her stuff, even to this day, it's hard to find anything like it, man. It's tremendous, tremendous stuff.
Yeah. No, I know their name. Oh, that's interesting. Diverse, especially diverse. Mount Rushmore. I like it. I like it, man. That's good, dude. We can go another hour or so. Honestly, I kind of leave some meat on the bone for another conversation in the near future because I want to talk to you about more stuff. Because, like I said,
All right,
some of the things
I
you're talking
love
about is compelling stuff, not just wrestling, but also about race and about we can sit here and bash Tony Khan again if we want to. No big deal. I mean, because Tony Khan is the ambassador of not of a self or a lack of self awareness, of course. And I've been spending a lot of time on my wrestling podcast. My last episode was this past Thursday called Tony. Like this. What are you doing? Like stop. Stop talking. Sometimes less is more. I'm rooting for the guy, but
yes,
less is more
yes,
sometimes. You know what I mean? Anyway, plug away your stuff, man. Because I mean,
yes.
your brand is kicking ass, man. I enjoy your work, man. I hope, like I said, hope to be on your show in the near future. I'll have you back on the show definitely very soon. So plug away, brother.
Well, first and foremost, EJ, it is an honor. I've been waiting for this
Yes.
moment, man, to
Yeah.
come on your show and do you solid back because, brother, you took your time and came on my show and delivered just solid content. And I really respect you and appreciate you, man. Like, honestly,
Thank you.
it goes deep. It goes deep. Words can express how much I respect you.
I appreciate that, man.
But Duke Loves Rasslin. Duke Loves Rasslin, Rasslin. I put out at least one episode per week, and I go directly to the source. You'll see a lot of wrestlers from the past, the present, and the future.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I love the most is to talk to these indie wrestling kids, man, the folks who are just breaking in, and to pick their brains and figure out who they are today. Because when they become superstars, like a Nikita Lyons, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I gave her one of her first interviews when she was Faith the Lioness, and I
Ah,
kept up with her through the years. So that journey is tremendous, and she has a story that we're going to follow up on that's tremendous. But that's the sort of stuff that I really am passionate about, and I'm going to put a bug in people's ear, especially you content creators out there.
yeah.
Stop going after the biggest name and thinking that that's what you have to go after, and that's it. There was someone who helped that person get to where they are today. Who trained them? Who gave them a big break? Who took them back and forth to wrestling school or to their first indie bookings when they didn't have a dime or a pot to piss in? You know what I mean? Start talking to some of those folks. Because when you get those compelling stories from those folks, that opens the door for more of those bigger names to be on your platform and most importantly to trust you as a content creator. You can't walk into the game and think John Cena is going to come on your show. Sometimes you gotta first develop a relationship with someone who helped John Cena at a time in his life when he needed a lot of help. You know what I'm saying? So just keep that in mind, folks. I see a lot of content creators. They come and they go because they don't respect the fact that you must respect these wrestlers and respect the business. And part of that is not just going after the biggest name in the book. Speak to everybody, get a well-rounded roster of guests so that you can build some credibility from the ground up. You can't walk into a place and be the CEO from day one. It doesn't work like that. And I
Right.
definitely am a guy who believes in ground up 100%. So there's that. Tell us the truth. You heard us discuss it. It's my collaboration with iHeartRadio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Literally, it is a tremendous project that we're doing there. I interview
I love
people
it.
from all
It's
walks
great.
of life, and we talk about marginalized communities and, most importantly, how people from those communities combat the issues that they face every day. Listen, folks, I'm the same guy no matter where you see me. I love people. And I truly feel like God has put me on this earth to help people. And one of the ways that I help people is helping them tell their stories and giving them encouragement,
Yeah,
reminding people that your best days are ahead of you, man. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean I don't have an opinion, and I'm going to voice my opinion. I'm going to be very sharp about my opinion, but I'm always going to be there to help somebody too. So that's the give and take. And again, EJ, your class personified, bro. Like I like to say, you're top shelf. So
I
again, I
appreciate that,
appreciate
brother.
you, brother.
By the way, speaking on the podcast too, like one of my favorite episodes that I liked was your one with your mom. It's really good. That was a great one.
Good. I'll tell you, man.
How's she doing, by
You
the
know
way,
what's funny
after
about
the
that? Let me
surgery?
just say this real quick. She's doing better. She's doing better, and thank goodness. We didn't know she was going to make it out of that surgery.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
from an emotional standpoint, I interviewed my mom at a time where she had her surgery the next day,
yeah. Right next day,
and
24
that
hours.
could have
Yeah,
been the last time that anyone ever heard from me. You know what I mean? So, just deep stuff, bro. I appreciate you bringing that up, though, man. I love my mom. And listen, let me say this: that's how I measure people. If you're not good to your mother, how the hell could you be good to anybody else?
that's so true.
So,
my mom's my best friend.
dude,
So my mom's my best friend. So
that's it.
I mean,
That's it.
her and I talk for
That's it.
hours about stuff like politics and whatever it may be, life. Like my goal to this day, I've been trying for 10 years and I'm still failing it, but is to get her on this podcast. I had my dad on my podcast numerous times. I had siblings on this podcast numerous times, cousins, you name it, brother, you name it. But my mom is the ultimate, the ultimate get from me. If I get her on the pod. She's softening. She says, "Oh, I'm softening to the idea of doing it. Maybe we'll see. We'll see." My goal is to end this year with her having a conversation with me on this podcast.
Let me say this to EJ's mom, please, I beg of you, do this show with your son. It's something special, and it's something that you can reflect on that really will make a difference. My mom, we still talk about that episode. We talk about things that were mentioned on that episode, and we've been able to expand further. Listen, I've gone to therapy with my mom.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? When I tell you that the relationship is deep, it's deep, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love my mom, and ironically, because of that, I'm able to love my lady.
Right.
I'm able to love my sister.
Right.
I'm able to love you. You know what I'm saying? It's just people who don't treat other people right. All you got to do is look at the relationships that they started off with in life, and you can see, you can draw a direct line, man.
Of
If you're
course.
deficient there, there's no way in hell I can expect you to really love me. So I have to be cautious around you because of that.
Right.
But somebody like yourself, EJ, my guard is completely down around you, brother, because I know that you cut from the same cloth, and I respect you and appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that, brother, and we'll do this again soon, definitely, man. Because this is an excellent conversation. I like people having on the show, open conversation. It's a safe space, but it's not. You know what I'm saying? It's come on down. Let's have a discussion about things, even disagree on it, and go from there, man. And that's what I encourage. Duke
No
Bennett.
notes. We did it with no notes, EJ.
Bro,
We did it with no notes.
the only reason I have this right now is because I had this this one. I'll make sure I asked you this little tidbits, so I don't forget it. That's all. Because we get into deep into the minutia. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Duke Bennett, man. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
We did it off the top, baby.
Yes, sir.
All right, brother. Be safe.
All right.